Good evening, everybody. Jeremiah Clark, Product Director for Lowrance Electronics. I'm here with Matthew Laster, the Product Manager for our Lowrance displays. Tonight, we're going to walk you through the difference and some of the benefits and features in our Lowrance portfolio. So we like to say we have a good, better, best portfolio. We're going to walk you through here a little bit of just looking at some of the demo stuff and asking Matthew some questions about the differences in the products. We're also going to cut to a video we shot on the water showing some side-by-side, head-to-head comparisons. A little bit of how-to, so it's not just what is the product line, but it's also, how do we use it? How do we tune it? Can I see differences between the different product lines? But really, the question we get asked a lot is, why do you guys have 3 different product families? And kind of the first thing we want to do is jump in and talk about that. If you have any questions that come up along the way, we do have a full team of Lowrance members online ready to answer your question live in the chat. Once we come back from the video, we're going to be here to answer your live Q&A of that you guys have had, like the popular questions or the tough ones. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Matthew. And Matthew, just kind of give me the quick overview. Why do we have 3 different product families, and what's the difference? If you walk into a store, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so you mentioned good, better, best, right? So we really try and have a display for every angler. So whether you're maybe new to fishing, or if you only get out a couple of times a year, we've got a product for you. If you're a hardcore guy fishing 3-4 times a week, we got one for you too. And if you're right in the middle, we have that as well.
I wish I was the hardcore guy 3-4 times a week.
Don't we all, right? So that starts right at the beginning with Hook Reveal. So this will be our more entry-level type series. Hook Reveal, we've really designed to be the easiest product on the market to use. All the menus on it are super simple. We'll see a little bit of that on the water. It's really easy to fly around. You'll see it's mostly the smaller screen sizes, so it'll be available in a 5-inch, a 7-inch, and a 9-inch. Then there's different sonar technologies as well. So if you need side scan, if you don't need side scan, there's a Hook Reveal for you. If you step up from Hook Reveal, you move into our Elite FS. This is our newest display. We've launched this one last year, and it sits right in the middle. It's actually the most value-packed fish finder in the market, I believe. So in terms of all the performance, all the capability, you're going to have a lot of things that you would normally have seen in the higher end, but they're packed right here in the middle. So things like a touch screen. You're going to have some networking, so if you want to put in a like a dome radar or a new active target live sonar that you're seeing here, that's pretty cool looking.
Ghost trolling motor?
Ghost trolling motor as well, all full networkable right there too. When you step up from Elite FS, you move into the ultimate fishing system here with HDS Live. So this is going to be the one, this is going to control everything on your boat basically. Ghost trolling motor, a bunch of different performance sonars, all kinds of radars, multiple units, really easy to build a big sophisticated network so you have all your data wherever you're at on the boat.
So the Hook Reveal, entry level, standalone, doesn't network to anything. So
Correct.
I assume it doesn't do ghost, it doesn't do active target.
Right.
Give me like the 3 things that just make this product amazing.
It's easy. That's the big thing. It's
Okay.
easy to buy, it's easy to install, and it's easy to use. You want 3 right there.
All right.
So having a model basically for every angler, you take it home. You're going to install it on your boat. Super simple. Transducer mounting is really easy. Power is really easy. Actually mounting the display, whether you're using the bracket or you're flush mounting it, super simple and easy.
But we still have versions that have side scan and down scan. Can you talk a little bit about the difference of those?
Yeah, so we've got a few different models of Hook Reveal. The easy way to tell is it'll say right here on the label. If it says it's a TS, that means triple shot. And if it says SS, that means it's a split shot. The difference there is side scan. TS models have side scan, down scan, and chirp sonar. And SS models have chirp sonar and down scan.
All right, and you talked about stepping up to kind of the middle child, which is no middle child. It's a big middle child. You get networking, so you get active target. You get NEMA, so you get ghost and the ability to run external GPS sensors and those kind of things.
Yep.
Any other real differences between these two? Or?
The other biggest difference really is going to be a touch screen. So having the ability on here to actually touch what you're doing, zoom in and out on the chart, really makes it really easy to find any data you want, do anything you want on the water here. That's going to be really the biggest difference between a Hook Reveal and an Elite FS.
And I guess we'll see some of those differences in the on-the-water videos.
We will play around with all of those when we're on the water.
And then from here to here, it's the ultimate fishing system, right? We talk about Lowrance HDS is the ultimate fishing system. It's the biggest, baddest sonar we have on the market. It's the best screen we have on the market. You guys will see some of that when we actually get live on the water. Or not live on the water, but recorded on the water. And some of the other things, multiple output channels on the sonar, multiple networking ports, really flexible and expandable.
That was going to be the thing I was going to mention. So we have networking in both models, right, in Elite FS and in HDS Live. But with having multiple Ethernet connectors on the back of most of the HDSs, it really makes it easy to build larger networks. So if you're going to put 3, 4 displays on, HDS is going to make it a lot easier on you to build a big, complicated network like that.
All right. So I think now we're going to go ahead and kick it over to the video we shot on the water showing some of the side-by-sides. There are, as I say, there are some basic tutorials in these videos that talk about how, what sensitivity, what's color line, how does this sonar actually work. If you want an in-depth dive on that, the page you're on right now, lowrance.com/live, if you scroll to the bottom of that, we've got 2 specific ones on sonar basics. We've got one on charting basics. We've got one on installation. So feel free to check out what you got below. Remember, we have a Lowrance team standing by right now in the live chat to answer your questions. And then when we come back from the on the water video, again, Matthew and I are going to answer the most common questions you guys have from the video, or just any questions that came up that weren't covered in the live chat. So let's kick you out to the water. So we're out here on the lake, and we're going to look at traditional sonar first. One thing with traditional sonar that we do a lot of is we actually use a lot of artificial targets. We use tennis balls. If we're looking for really small targets, we'll use like fish floats or bobbers. Oh, yeah. But in this case, we're going to use some bigger tennis balls with some bags and an anchor. And Matthew, can you explain to us why we're doing this method versus just looking for fish themselves? Yeah,
absolutely. So this is a test we actually use, our engineers and R&D actually use when we're looking at traditional sonar. So this makes it so that we can make a really consistent view of a bunch of different passes and see the same thing multiple times, right? If we try and look at fish, or if we look at actual structure, it's not always the same. Fish move, trees move around underwater, that kind of stuff. So with these targets, it makes it really easy and simple for us to see the same thing every time on multiple passes.
Why a tennis ball?
Yeah, so the tennis ball is actually really good. It's full of air right in the middle, right? So it really mimics the air bladder in a fish. And we can actually do multiple tennis balls in a bag, so we can make them bigger or smaller. So we've got a few different sizes of targets here set up. And then we've also spread them out at different lengths apart from each other also. So we'll be able to see them throughout the water column also.
So that tennis ball mimics the air bladder. So that's where we get the arc, right?
Yep.
And so when you go over a fish, going over this is the same way. How are we drawing that actual arc?
Yeah, so what we do is, we just send the sonar signal down and we get the echo back. And then as we're driving over, that kind of the line distance between where the transducer is and the tennis balls changes, and that's what makes that fish arch, right? As you go closer over the top of it, it kind of comes a little bit closer, and so it makes that arch shape.
So the end is the edge of the arc as it first comes in, and then it kind of comes up and goes back down?
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to mimic here. So we have these set up about 5 feet apart, roughly 5 to 6 feet apart. So when we drive over it with the different sonar technologies, we should be able to see all the individual targets making their own individual group of arches, and we can repeat that test over and over again so we can show you some of the clarity differences and also some of the differences you get with the different sonar technologies, so the beam angles and the cone angles that we're going to talk about a little bit later.
It really means that as we're doing this test, as we look at the 3 product families, we'll be able to see the same thing on each one and be able to show you the differences.
All right, that sounds good. Well, let's get this set up and let's get going.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So actually here you can see the repeatability that we talked about. This is why we do the balls or the buoys, so that way you can actually go over and do the same thing over and over again. So we have 4 sets of targets, 1, 2, 3, 4. What's kind of interesting is we did do one smaller set of targets, the third one up from the bottom, so we could actually make a smaller arch, as opposed to the bigger set of targets towards the bottom. One thing we've noticed doing these when we do it is actually a lot of fish will actually attract towards our targets. So you actually get a school of bait fish hanging out right to next to the top of this. If you look close, you can actually see the line that we're using to suspend that. So we just made another pass. That school of bait fish is still there. But you can't always rely on those. Again, that's why we do the artificial targets. But here we go again, 1, 2, 3, 4 targets in the water. And you can see if you look real closely right here, that line coming down. That's the actual line we have these suspended on, and there come the targets again. On this pass with high chirp, you can even see the anchor on the bottom. All right, so one thing we talk about is the fish arch, and Matthew on the front of the boat gave you a demonstration of what a fish arch looks like. Here, going off the edge of the screen are those targets we did, about 2 miles an hour. You can see the tail of them as they go down in the start of the arch, then it gets taller in the middle, and it drops down at the edge. People always ask, what do fish look like when you're sitting stationary? Why don't my arches look like arches anymore? Well, now these targets were anchored directly on top of the artificial targets we suspended. They're no longer coming in and out of the cone, so they're not going to make that arch. We're banging off the same place of that target over and over again at a consistent depth. So when you see something that looks like this on the screen, is when you're anchored up fishing. If you're, you know, anchored to a brush pile or drop shotting, vertically fishing, jigging, ice fishing, you're gonna see lines, not arches. Whereas if you're actually moving, you'll see arches, and then the arch itself at a higher rate of speed should get narrower, and at a lower rate of speed should start to stretch out up until the point where you actually are stationary and it just stretches out and covers the whole screen. Another question we get all the time is people asking what are the differences in the frequencies? Why would I want to use high chirp over medium chirp? And really it just kind of comes down to the application you're looking for. If you're wanting nice, crisp, clean arches where you can get really good target separation and kind of see, you know, detail, this is high chirp on this side of the screen. Basically you see the bottom isn't as thick, the arches aren't as thick, but if you start to see some of the actual detail between them and the spacing, like right here, between those two balls in that bag, versus over here on medium chirp, we're going to a wider cone angle. Wider cone angle is more coverage. It's looking at more stuff, so it's inherently not going to be as high detailed. But I can actually see a little bit more information about maybe what the bottom is. I can actually see these targets bigger and wider, so if I were searching for a bigger area, or even maybe wanting to cover a little bit more water and give up a little bit of clarity, I could switch to medium chirp. So right here frozen on the screen is a great example of what does high chirp look like versus what does medium chirp look like. And again, it's really down to that clarity, thin, high detailed, wider, thicker. So we talked about high chirp and medium chirp, but what we haven't talked about is the low frequency, so low chirp or 50 kilohertz. This boat, we don't have a transducer on that, on here for that. I mean, we're only on 40 feet of water, so you really don't need 50 kilohertz. 50 kilohertz is really going to be for you deeper water anglers that need the depth penetration that you just won't get out of 200 or 83. The transducers we sell with 50 kilohertz for the most part include 200, so you can still get that high frequency, clear, crisp image. But when you go much deeper and you need much more depth penetration, that's where you would kick into the 50 kilohertz part. You know, at a glance, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And I think that if you're an advanced fish finder user, there's probably some personal preference settings in here that you like. But for the most part, even I've been in this business for 24 years, I leave everything pretty much in auto. But what you might see is you see on the screen where it says A-3. I've taken auto and I've told it there's a little too much information in the water column for me today, right? We've had a lot of rain, so there's a lot of clutter in the water. We've also got a nice clear thermocline in this lake, and when I was trying to show you guys the targets, I wanted to back that off. So here's the default auto setting, right? Here's the thermocline. This is the temperature inversion layer in the water, cooler versus hotter water. Up top you see a bunch of suspended small little targets or sediment. So you can adjust, even while you're in auto, you can adjust to see more information or a cleaner picture. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really your personal preference. I never personally recommend taking a unit out of auto. Even our sonar engineers use it in auto. Our pros use it in auto. When you put it in auto, you're telling the sonar, I know exactly how to dial it in for this specific scenario. And you might, you know, if you're an advanced fish finder user, you may know exactly how you want to get that picture for that specific condition. But the second you move your boat, or your water conditions change, or you want to go fish a different area, you'll have to set it up again. I think it's a lot easier to actually get lost here in terms of the settings versus just leaving it in auto, letting the unit do the work for you, and then bias up and down with auto plus, auto minus to get the picture and the amount of information that you're accustomed to seeing in your personal preference. So some of the other settings in here, we talked about auto or auto sensitivity, and that to me is the biggest one for an angler to know besides frequency, I think. Frequency on this transducer, the transducer connected will tell you what frequencies it's capable of doing. This one will do 200, 83, or high chirp or medium chirp. For most applications, I use the chirp frequencies. I very rarely use the dedicated actual sonar frequency. I think I get a clearer picture, I get better target separation. But they're in here if you want to use them. It's again, if you just like 200 for a certain reason or 83 for a certain reason, you can. I usually, again, default mine to chirp. Range, I usually leave on auto unless I'm trying to fish a specific range or if I want to show a certain amount of the bottom depth. But again, auto, we have an auto button at the bottom. You can manually select a range. But if I'm in 40 feet of water right now and I tell it I only want to look at 20 feet, I'm telling the fish finder, don't worry about what the actual depth is. Don't worry about what's going on. This is the only part I want to see. For that, I leave it in auto. As the bottom depth changes, the range will change as well. So we talked range, we talked frequency, we've talked sensitivity. The only other one on this main menu is color line. And this basically is biasing the color palette that you have chosen to highlight certain colors. So in this one, if you turn this up, you can see we bring in more yellows. So like if I wanted to see the actual air bladders in those tennis balls that we dropped over water, I can turn this up and pull a little bit more yellow out of it. I can also use it to kind of help, differentiate bottom hardness. The brighter the color in this palette, the stronger the signal return. Or if I wanted to just, clean it up and actually just wanted to get nice solid arches, we run default right around here, where I can actually just get a nice red arch. There's not a lot of yellow pulled in. Again, that's more of an advanced setting, I think, for people mainly trying to bottom hardness fish and get bottom hardness information. But again, it's a personal preference setting. You can go too high and wash the whole image out. You can go too low and basically get back almost no information. I usually run mine upper 60s, low 70s, get a nice good balance. And then advanced, in here we've got all the rest of the features, noise rejection and surface clarity. Those are basically the things that help clean up the sonar image. They're noise filters. You can change the scroll speed, how fast you want the image to scroll across the screen. As you speed it up, you notice now these arches start dragging into lines, because instead of letting the unit place a dot wherever the information came in, I'm just saying place it here, so it's a broken line. You can also slow it way down to where it's kind of creeping to a crawl. I never slow down. I usually run normal on everything, unless for some reason if I'm trying to track like a really fast jig or something like that, I may speed it up. I usually leave scroll speed on normal. Ping speed is set to max, and I never change the ping speed unless I'm getting interference from another nearby fish finder. So the last thing I want to talk about here before I hand over to Matthew to talk Elite FS is we get a lot of questions, what are the differences in HDS and Elite FS? And as you saw in our intro, the Elite FS is basically a baby HDS. It has a lot of the same functions and features, even very similar output power ratings. But one thing I do want to talk about that makes this the ultimate fishing system and kind of our top-end platform is the fact that the sonar in this is a much enhanced version over what we have in Elite FS. This is dual channel output. You can run 2 different transducers at one time. Elite FS is single. This one they both are 1 kW max output power, but the capacitors, the ability to put power in the water longer with HDS can sustain that 1 kW a lot longer for a deeper, longer pulse, which effectively gives it more power or more usable power. So this can drive transducers harder, longer. It is a better sonar engine overall, and again, dual channel versus a single channel in the Elite FS when it comes to regular sonar. And one last thing about HDS that can do over the Elite FS is the ability to do chirp and structure scan at the same time. Again, that higher horsepower sonar engine, this thing has the ability, the memory, the processor to run both chirp sonar and structure scan at the exact same time. Elite FS can run side scan and sonar, just not side scan and chirp sonar at the same time.
All right, so we've switched over to Elite FS, and like Jeremiah just mentioned, the sonar in these is really quite similar between Elite FS and HDS Live, other than a few different, the actual output power being a little bit different. But here you can see these same sonar targets that we've been going over, and that was a relatively slow pass, so you see they're nice and big and flat. Not quite as flat as what we showed earlier when we were sitting still right on top of them. But you can see, like I said, like Jeremiah was pointing out earlier, all these colors in here. You see the school of bait that's kind of hanging out around them still there. And if we keep it on screen, back up a little bit. So you get really nice definition on all of these, between all 5 sets of tennis balls. This is on high chirp. So like we mentioned earlier, this is going to be your nice, thin, high detail fish arches. If I switch it over to medium when we make our next pass, you'll see the bottom gets quite big, so that's the coverage area of the high chirp beam, just being wider on the bottom. And then you can see just how much bigger these fish arches are as well. So they are bigger, but they're a little bit less defined. If you look at them against what we did on high chirp a minute ago, they were really nice, thin fish arches. Now they're kind of a little bit blobby, but they're really big and huge. So that's going to make it really easy. Like if you're trying to track a jig or a bait right underneath you, having that bigger coverage area makes it easier to hold on to. So one of the other things that we've done with Elite FS is we like all of our Lowrance products to kind of look and feel the same. So that way, if you decide later on to upgrade, or if you've got different models on your boat, you should be able to walk up to a Lowrance and know how to get around, right? So Jeremiah mentioned a few of the settings on the sidebar menu over here, and you'll notice this is actually the exact same sidebar between Elite FS and HDS Live. So I have the same range buttons, you know, the same auto on the bottom, the same settings there. I have exactly the same frequency menu, exactly the same sensitivity, and so you'll notice again, I've still got this in auto -3, like Jeremiah had a minute ago. If I put it back up to just plain old auto, you can see that thermocline come in a little bit more. See the fish arches get a little bit more connected. The bottom comes in a little bit better. Same color line and same advanced menus as well. So all of this is completely identical to HDS Live. All right, so again, just to kind of, you know, make sure you guys are understanding the difference in the sonar technologies between Elite FS and HDS Live. Jeremiah mentioned the output power. So they're actually the same max 1 kW output power, but HDS Live can actually drive that 1 kW a little bit harder, a little bit longer. It can sustain that for a longer period than Elite FS can. So you'll get the same output power, but you're going to get a little bit more performance out of HDS Live. The other really big difference is the ability to run chirp and SideScan at the same time. HDS Live can do anything at any time, basically. But one of the limitations of Elite FS is it just doesn't have quite the same amount of memory in order to hold those chirp pulses. So you see I've got it on medium chirp here, and if I actually go over to SideScan, it'll throw up a warning on me and it'll actually say stopped. And if I try and unstop it, it'll tell me down on the bottom that I can't do that because I've got chirp running. So that's going to be another one of the limitations of Elite FS versus HDS Live. So now that we've had a look at Elite FS, we're going to transition over and have a look at Hook Reveal. So Hook Reveal is a little bit different. So we talked about the similarities between Elite FS and HDS Live, but Hook Reveal actually runs a different kind of sonar engine than the other products. And that starts right with the transducer, you know, under the water, you know, how we're generating and creating the sonar signal. So Elite FS and HDS Live actually come out of the box with the exact same transducer. Most dealers and customers of ours use our active imaging 3-in-1, and that's got side scan, down scan, and medium and high chirp sonar built right in. With Hook Reveal, we wanted to make the easiest product on the market to use. So what we did there is we actually set up a line of transducers specific for Hook Reveal. And what we did there was we tuned them actually to make them have the best of both worlds without the user having to actually change anything. So the transducers that come with Hook Reveal are going to either be a split shot or a triple shot, and the difference there is side scan. Split shots have chirp sonar and down scan in them, and triple shots have chirp sonar, down scan, and side scan. But what's really different between a Hook Reveal and an Elite FS and HDS Live as it relates to sonar is the actual traditional sonar that we put into the transducer. So we kind of went for a hybrid approach. So we talked a little bit about medium chirp versus high chirp on HDS and Elite FS. If you look at a Hook Reveal, you're going to notice you don't actually have medium chirp as an option with those transducers. It's only high chirp or 200 kilohertz. And the reason for that is that actual sonar element that we put